7 centuries of secrets, 1 hidden relic, and a prophecy that could awaken the lost Templar order. Will history's guardians survive the Black Cowl's deadly pursuit? Stay tuned and listen to the full story as we unravel the mystery piece by piece. The night was cold, but the square of Paris burned with an unnatural heat. Thousands gathered along the Seine, their faces glowing in the flickering light of the pyres. 2 wooden stakes stood in the center, ropes tied to them like grim sentinels awaiting their victims. Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar, stood bound, his white mantle with the red cross torn and soiled. Yet his eyes held no fear. He looked past the crowd, past the flames being redded, as if staring into eternity itself. The executioner lit the first torch. Smoke began to rise, curling like dark spirits toward the sky. The crowd murmured, some in pity, some in anger, some in quiet satisfaction that the powerful order of the temple was no more. Nearby, King Philip IV's men watched silently, their armor catching the glow of the fire. This was the king's final triumph, the end of the Templars' wealth, their secrets, their power. But as the flames licked at the base of the stake, Jacques de Molay raised his voice. It was strong, resonant, and carried across the square. Pope Clement, he cried. King Philip, within 1 year, you shall stand with me before the throne of God, to answer for your crimes. A hush fell over the square. Even the fire seemed to hesitate for a moment. The Grand Master's words were not a plea, but a curse, a prophecy spoken with such conviction that it chilled every heart that heard it. Then the fire roared, and the night was filled with the scent of burning wood, ore, and burning flesh. And so the last master of the temple died, but his words lived on. In the months that followed, Paris could not forget the voice of Jacques de Molay. The curse seemed to hang in the air, like a shadow that no wind could disperse. And then, the unthinkable began to happen. Just 33 days after the Grand Master's death, Pope Clement V fell gravely ill. Whispers spread through the Vatican that he had been struck by divine punishment. His body was consumed by fever, and before the year was out, the Pope was dead. Soon after, King Philip IV suffered his own fate. While hunting in the forest of Fontainebleau, he was thrown from his horse, his skull crushed against the earth. Some claimed they saw terror in the king's eyes as he died, as though he beheld a figure in white robes standing over him, Jacques de Molay, come to claim him. The people of France began to murmur that the Grand Master's words had come true. The curse of the Templars was real. And that fear did not die with the king and the Pope. It passed down the generations, whispered in dark corners, told to children by firelight, that the Templars would one day rise again, to seek justice. But what few knew was that de Molay had not only cursed his enemies, he had left behind a prophecy. A scroll, hidden from the inquisitors, was smuggled out of Paris by a loyal knight on the night of the execution. It spoke not of revenge, but of a time to come. After 7 centuries have passed, the temple shall awaken, and the cross of the poor knights shall blaze once more. Centuries rolled on. The Templars became legend, then myth. Their treasures, their secrets, their rights were said to be lost. And yet, the prophecy endured, locked away, waiting for the appointed hour. That hour might be now. The rain poured over Paris, turning the streets into glistening ribbons of light. In the dimly lit reading room of the Bibliothèque Nationale, Dr. Eleanor Mosso sat hunched over a stack of medieval manuscripts. She was a historian, specializing in the fall of the Templars, and tonight she had found something that made her pulse quicken. Among the dusty parchment scrolls was a fragment she had never seen referenced before, a brittle piece of vellum with strange markings and Latin words scrawled in a hurried hand. The ink was faded, but legible enough for her to read the final line. Post septem secula templum resurgit. After 7 centuries, the temple shall rise again. Her breath caught. This was no ordinary chronicle. It appeared to be a direct record from the night of Jacques de Molay's execution. The handwriting, verified by paleographers, matched other documents written by a known Templar scribe. Eleanor glanced at the clock. It was past midnight, and she was alone in the archives. The rain tapped softly on the high windows, as if urging her to keep reading. The scroll mentioned a secret location, a place of ashes where the true prophecy had been sealed. She copied the lines into her notebook, her hands trembling. The Templars had been gone for 7 centuries. Their order dissolved in 1312. Their Grand Master died in 1314. 7 centuries later, it was 2024. A chill ran down Eleanor's spine. What if the prophecy wasn't just medieval superstition? What if someone, or something, had been waiting all this time for the world to be ready? She packed the scroll carefully, planning to revisit the archives in the morning. But as she stepped out into the rain, she noticed a figure watching her from across the street. A man in a dark coat, standing unnaturally still, his face hidden in shadow. When she turned to look again, he was gone. Eleanor's footsteps echoed as she hurried along the rain-slick streets, clutching her bag close. The sense of being watched hadn't left her. She glanced over her shoulder again. Empty street. Still, her instincts screamed that someone had followed her. The next morning, she returned to the library, but the scroll she had studied was gone. The archivist swore no one had entered the restricted section after her, yet the entire box of Templar manuscripts had been removed under an official request. When she asked who authorized it, the archivist merely shrugged and said the documents had been claimed by the Ministry of Culture. But Eleanor had been in this field long enough to know when someone was covering something up. That night, she reviewed her notes. The phrase "a place of ashes" is repeated 3 times in the text, alongside a cryptic symbol, 2 crossed swords over a circle. She had seen that emblem once before, carved into the ruins of an abandoned chapel outside Paris, a site rumored to have been a secret Templar commandery. Her thoughts were interrupted by a sharp knock at the door. She froze. A letter had been slid under the frame. She picked it up carefully. No address, no signature, just a single line handwritten in Latin. The temple wakes. Trust no one. Her heart pounded. Whoever sent this knew what she had found. The next day, Eleanor drove to the ruins of the chapel. The forest road was overgrown, and the stone walls of the building were half swallowed by moss. Inside, the air was cool and damp, smelling of earth and thyme. On the altar, half buried in dust, she saw it, the same emblem from the scroll, freshly carved. Someone had been here recently. And suddenly, she was no longer sure if she had come here in search of history, or if history had summoned her. The chapel was silent except for Eleanor's breath and the occasional drip of water from the broken roof. She stepped closer to the altar, running her fingers over the fresh carving. The stone felt cold, almost unnaturally so. Then she noticed something odd, a crack along the floor at the base of the altar, forming a perfect rectangle. It wasn't natural. Eleanor searched the area until her fingers found a small metal ring hidden beneath the dust. Heart racing, she pulled. The slab shifted with a groan of ancient hinges, revealing a narrow stairway descending into darkness. She hesitated for only a moment, then switched on her flashlight and descended. The air below was cool, stale, as if it hadn't been disturbed in centuries. The passage opened into a small chamber, its walls covered with faded frescoes of knights, swords raised, surrounding a blazing cross. In the center of the room stood a stone chest. Eleanor's hands trembled as she brushed away centuries of dust from the lid. Latin words were carved deep into the surface. To be opened after 7 centuries. Her flashlight flickered as if on cue. She swallowed hard and pushed the lid aside. Inside lay a bundle wrapped in rotting cloth. Carefully, she unwrapped it, revealing a scroll sealed with red wax, still unbroken after all these years. The wax bore the symbol of the temple, 2 knights riding a single horse. She was staring at something no one had seen since the night Jacques de Molay died. Before she could examine it further, a sound echoed from above, the creak of a door, footsteps on stone. Someone else had entered the chapel. Eleanor quickly hid the scroll inside her jacket and turned off her light. The chamber was plunged into total darkness. Whoever was up there was coming down. The footsteps grew louder, descending the narrow stairwell one by one. Eleanor pressed herself against the wall, her pulse hammering in her ears. She could smell the dust, taste the metallic tang of fear on her tongue. A beam of light cut through the darkness, another flashlight. Dr. Masseau, a man's voice called softly, with a faint accent she couldn't place. You have something that does not belong to you. Eleanor didn't answer. She tightened her grip on the scroll hidden under her jacket. The man stepped into the chamber. He was tall, dressed in a dark coat that glistened with rain. His face was shadowed beneath the brim of a wide hat, but Eleanor could see the glint of something metallic on his chest, a pendant shaped like the Templar cross. I am not your enemy, he said calmly. But if you want to live to see tomorrow, you must come with me. There are others who will kill for what you've just found. Eleanor hesitated. Who are you? He smiled faintly. Someone who has waited a very long time for this moment. Before she could respond, a gunshot rang out from above, and dust rained down from the ceiling. The stranger cursed under his breath. They've found us. We need to go, now. He grabbed Eleanor's arm and pulled her toward a narrow passage at the far side of the chamber she hadn't noticed before. The two of them ran through the darkness, guided only by his light. Behind them, heavy boots clattered down the stairs, voices shouting in a language she didn't recognize. Whoever those men were, they weren't historians. As they burst out into the night through a hidden exit in the forest, Eleanor realized her life had just changed forever. The prophecy was no longer a dusty legend. It was alive, and people were willing to kill for it. They emerged from the trees, breathless, the rain now only a mist that clung to their skin. The stranger led Eleanor to a black motorcycle hidden under a tarp. Without asking, he handed her a helmet. Get on, he said. They sped away into the night, the forest blurring past. Only when they reached a deserted roadside chapel far from Paris did he finally stop. Eleanor tore off the helmet, her heart still racing. Start talking, as she demanded. Who are you? Why were you following me? The man removed his hat, revealing a lean face, dark eyes that seemed to hold centuries of secrets. My name is Gabriel de St. Clair, he said. I am a guardian of the temple. My family has served this duty for 28 generations, since the night Jacques de Molay was executed. Eleanor stared at him. Guardians of what? Of the prophecy you now carry. He nodded to the scroll she still held under her jacket. We swore an oath to keep it hidden until the time was right. That time is now. Eleanor shook her head in disbelief. You expect me to believe the Templars still exist? Gabriel's expression was deadly serious. Not as an order. Not as they were. But the bloodline survives. The knowledge survives. And now, someone else has learned of the prophecy. They will stop at nothing to seize it, to use it. Who are they? Gabriel's eyes darkened. A secret cabal calling themselves the Black Cowl. descendants of the men who betrayed the temple. They have waited just as long as we have, but for the prophecy to fail. If the temple rises again, their power crumbles. Eleanor felt a chill. And you think this prophecy will make that happen? Gabriel looked toward the horizon. It is more than a prophecy. It is a command. A call to awaken what was buried. And now that it has been found, there is no going back. Somewhere in the distance, a car engine echoed down the road. Gabriel's jaw tightened. They've found us again, he said grimly. We must reach the next sanctuary before dawn, or all is lost. The motorcycle roared through the back roads of the French countryside, headlights cutting across the misty fields. Gabriel didn't slow until they reached a crumbling stone priory hidden deep in the woods. Its roof had long since collapsed, but beneath the ruins, a narrow staircase led them to an underground crypt lit by a single oil lamp. This place was once a Templar refuge, Gabriel said as they descended. Few alive even know it exists. Eleanor knelt on the cold stone floor, pulling the scroll from inside her jacket. Her hands trembled as she broke the red wax seal that had survived 7 centuries. The parchment crackled softly as she unrolled it. By the light of the lamp, the words came alive. To those who come after, when the stars have turned 7 times 100 years, awaken the temple. Restore what was broken. The blood of the martyrs calls for justice. Seek the crown of light, hidden where the ashes of the master fell. When it is raised, the world shall know the truth, and the temple shall rise anew. Eleanor's voice quivered as she read it aloud. What is the crown of light? She asked. Gabriel's expression was grim. A relic said to hold the last secret of the temple. Some say it is the key to their lost treasure. Others claim it is knowledge so dangerous it could topple kings, even today. Before Eleanor could speak, a noise echoed through the crypt, the faint sound of stones shifting above them. They're here, Gabriel whispered, extinguishing the lamp. The crypt was plunged into darkness. Heavy boots scraped against the ground above, then began to descend the stairs. Gabriel drew a short sword from beneath his coat, an ancient weapon, its blade etched with the Templar cross. Stay behind me, he said. If they take the scroll, everything we've done for 700 years will mean nothing. The first shadow appeared in the stairwell. And then all hell broke loose. The first intruder lunged down the steps, his silhouette framed in the faint moonlight seeping through the broken roof above. Gabriel moved fast, too fast for someone armed only with a sword. His blade flashed in the dark, striking the man's weapon from his hands with a metallic clang. Eleanor crouched low against the wall, clutching the scroll to her chest as the crypt exploded with chaos. More shadows poured into the chamber. 3, 4, maybe 5 of them, their boots pounding against the stone. Gunfire cracked. Sparks lit up the darkness. Gabriel shoved Eleanor behind a pillar. Stay down. She pressed her hands over her ears as the fight raged around her. The clash of steel, the hiss of bullets ricocheting off stone, the guttural shouts in a language she couldn't understand. It felt like stepping into the middle of a medieval battle, except now the enemy carried modern weapons. One of the attackers spotted her and charged. Eleanor's instincts took over. She grabbed a loose stone from the floor and hurled it with all her strength. It struck the man's temple, and he collapsed with a groan. Gabriel grabbed her arm. Now! They sprinted toward a narrow tunnel at the back of the crypt. Gabriel kicked aside a slab that concealed the passage, and they ducked inside just as a flashbang detonated behind them, filling the crypt with blinding white light. The tunnel twisted and sloped upward until they stumbled out into the cool night air. The forest was silent, but Eleanor knew it wouldn't be for long. The attackers would find the exit. Gabriel mounted the motorcycle again, breathing hard. "They're better equipped than I thought," he said. "This is no longer just a chase, it's a war." Eleanor held the scroll tight. "Then we have to finish what de Molay started," she said, surprising herself with the steel in her voice. Gabriel nodded once, a grim smile forming. "Then we go to where it all began, the place where the master burned." He revved the engine, and they disappeared into the night, leaving the crypt and the bodies behind. The night sky over Paris glowed faintly as Gabriel guided the motorcycle back toward the heart of the city. Hours later, they stood on the banks of the Seine, the great river flowing silently beneath them. "This is it," Gabriel said, nodding toward the dark silhouette of the Pont Neuf bridge. Here, on the Isle de Lar site, Jacques de Molay met his end. A fire burned for hours. The ashes of the Grand Master were scattered to the wind. Eleanor gazed at the spot, trying to imagine the scene 7 centuries earlier. The crowd, the pyres, the voice of the Grand Master crying out his curse. "Why here?" she asked. Gabriel crouched near the edge of the embankment, searching the stones with a gloved hand. "Because the prophecy says to seek the crown of light where the ashes fell. If the Templars hid a clue, this is where they would have left it." They searched in silence, guided only by moonlight and Gabriel's small lantern. At last, Eleanor's fingers brushed something strange, a stone that felt warmer than the others, as if it had been touched by fire recently. She pressed it. With a faint grinding sound, a section of the wall shifted, revealing a narrow recess. Inside lay a small iron box, sealed shut but engraved with the double knight emblem of the temple. Eleanor's heart raced as Gabriel pried it open. Inside was a single object, a medallion shaped like a sunburst, its center inlaid with a polished crystal that caught the moonlight and scattered it into 1,000 shards. Beneath it lay a strip of parchment. Eleanor carefully unfolded it and read aloud. "The crown awaits in the City of the Rose, where the guardians sleep in stone." Gabriel's eyes widened. "The City of the Rose," he murmured. "That can only mean Rosslyn." "Rosslyn Chapel?" Eleanor asked. He nodded. "Scotland. The last sanctuary of the temple." Before they could speak again, a distant engine roared. Headlights swept across the riverbank, black SUVs speeding toward them. Gabriel grabbed the medallion and parchment. "We're out of time." They leapt onto the motorcycle just as the first shots rang out, the sound of gunfire shattering the stillness of the Paris night. The motorcycle tore through the Paris streets, weaving between startled cars as bullets struck sparks from the cobblestones behind them. Gabriel didn't slow until they reached a safe house on the outskirts of the city, a hidden garage containing an unmarked van, false passports, and enough cash to disappear. "They'll have every airport watched by sunrise," Gabriel said as he loaded their gear. "We'll take the Channel Tunnel to England, then drive north." Eleanor climbed into the passenger seat, clutching the medallion. The crystal at its center seemed to glow faintly as the first light of dawn touched it. "You said Rosslyn Chapel was the last sanctuary," she said. "What makes it so important?" Gabriel kept his eyes on the road. Rosslyn was more than a church. It was a vault of knowledge, built by men who knew the temple would fall. Its walls are covered with carvings, maps, codes, symbols. Some believe the chapel itself is the key to unlocking the last secret of the Templars. "And you think this crown of light is there?" "I think," Gabriel said grimly, "that someone hid it where only those who truly understand the temple's legacy could find it. And now that you've read the prophecy, you're part of that legacy." Eleanor stared at him. "I'm a historian, Gabriel. Not a knight." He allowed himself a faint smile. History has a way of choosing its champions. They drove for hours, crossing into England as the sky turned grey. Eleanor dozed fitfully, waking only when Gabriel stopped at a lonely inn along the road. But even there, she felt the eyes on her. A man in a corner drinking coffee too slowly, a woman at the bar who glanced away whenever Eleanor looked. "They're everywhere," she whispered. Gabriel nodded. "The Black Cowl have influence across Europe. But they won't risk an open confrontation until we reach Scotland. They know Rosslyn is the endgame." That night, Eleanor lay awake in her small room, the medallion glowing faintly on the bedside table. She traced the words on the parchment again. "The Guardians sleep in stone." What would they find under Rosslyn Chapel? And what would happen if the prophecy was fulfilled? Somewhere beyond the walls, a car engine started. Too close, too sudden. Eleanor's stomach turned to ice. "They found us again," she whispered. The sound of car doors slamming outside snapped Eleanor out of bed. Gabriel was already at the window, peering through the curtains. "They're here," he said flatly. Eleanor grabbed the medallion and the scroll, shoving them into her bag. Within seconds, they were out the back door and sprinting across the wet grass toward the van. Headlights flared. A shout rang out in the night. Gabriel started the engine and floored the accelerator just as gunfire erupted, bullets punching holes through the wooden fence behind them. The van fishtailed onto the empty road, tires screaming as they sped into the dark countryside. "They won't stop now," Gabriel said grimly. "They know we're headed for Rosslyn." Eleanor clutched the dashboard. "Then we have to get there first." Hours turned into a blur of winding roads, shadowed forests, and the constant fear of pursuit. Every pair of headlights behind them made Eleanor's heart race. Twice, Gabriel took sharp turns onto backroads, throwing off the trail of the SUVs that dogged them. By dawn, the border to Scotland loomed ahead. The rolling hills rose out of the mist like ancient sentinels. Eleanor stared at them in awe. "It feels different here," as she said softly. "It should," Gabriel replied. Scotland was the last refuge of the Templars. After the order was destroyed in France, many knights fled north. Some say the Scottish kings gave them sanctuary, and in return, the Templars helped shape the destiny of this land. They reached the outskirts of the village of Rosslyn just as the sun broke through the clouds. The chapel stood on a hill, its stonework glowing in the golden light. Rosslyn Chapel, the legendary sanctuary. But even from a distance, Eleanor's stomach tightened. Several black SUVs were parked near the chapel's entrance. "They're already here," she whispered. Gabriel slowed the van, his expression dark. "Then we go on foot," he said, reaching for his sword. "This ends tonight, one way or another." Night had fallen over Rosslyn Chapel, and the ancient stone seemed to shimmer in the silver glow of the moon. Eleanor and Gabriel approached on foot, moving silently through the underbrush that had grown wild over centuries. The Black Cowl's SUVs were gone, or at least, temporarily withdrawn, but danger still hung in the air like a storm cloud. Inside, the chapel was a labyrinth of shadow and carving. Eleanor ran her fingers over the walls, tracing symbols and strange patterns. Knights, roses, suns, and crosses twisted into one another in ways that seemed meaningless at first, until Gabriel pointed out the hidden cues. "See these marks?" he whispered. "They're not decoration. They're a map of the chapel itself and the chambers beneath it." They followed the carvings to the rear of the chapel, where a massive stone floor slab bore the double knight emblem. Gabriel pushed, and it slowly gave way to a spiral staircase descending into darkness. Eleanor hesitated. "Are we sure this is safe?" Gabriel shook his head. Nothing in this place has been safe for 7 centuries. As they descended, the air grew cooler, carrying the scent of damp stone and centuries of secrecy. The walls were etched with warnings in Latin. He who dares awaken the temple must answer for what is hidden. At the bottom, they found a cavernous chamber, its ceiling supported by carved pillars. In the center rested a stone pedestal, and atop it, the crown of light. The medallion in Eleanor's bag pulsed faintly, as if reacting to the presence of the relic. She felt a shiver of awe and fear. But then, from above, the sound of footsteps echoed down the spiral stair. The Black Cowl had found them again. Gabriel drew his sword, and Eleanor read it herself, clutching the medallion. The prophecy was about to be fulfilled, or destroyed. The sound of boots on stone grew louder, echoing off the cavern walls like a drum of doom. Eleanor and Gabriel pressed against the carved pillars, the crown of light shimmering atop its pedestal, casting faint, eerie reflections across the chamber. "They're here," Gabriel muttered. A shadow appeared at the mouth of the staircase, followed by another, then another. Men in black coats, faces hidden beneath hoods, the Black Cowl. Their weapons gleamed in the flickering light of torches. One stepped forward, voice cold and commanding, a step away from the relic. "It belongs to us." Gabriel tightened his grip on his sword. "It belongs to history, and to the truth." The first attack came swift and brutal. The Black Cowl lunged down the chamber in a coordinated strike, aiming to overwhelm them. Gabriel parried expertly, steel ringing against steel, while Eleanor scrambled for a defensive position. The medallion pulsed more strongly, and Eleanor felt an odd warmth coursing through her fingers. Almost instinctively, she held it toward the crown. The crystal atop the medallion glowed, sending a beam of light that made the attackers recoil. Gabriel noticed her hesitation. "Now, Eleanor, use it." She pressed the medallion against the pedestal. A hidden mechanism clicked, and the stone platform began to shift. The crown of light rose slightly, glowing with an inner fire that bathed the chamber in golden brilliance. The Black Cowl hesitated, their confidence shaken. They had underestimated the relic's power. Gabriel fought them off, parrying and striking with precision, while Eleanor tried to understand the medallion's connection to the crown. A vibration ran through the stone floor as if the chapel itself was responding. "This is more than a crown," Gabriel shouted over the chaos. "It's a key, and we've just unlocked it." The attackers realized too late that the temple's secrets were not meant to be stolen. The chamber trembled as an unseen force seemed to push them back, the walls humming with energy. Eleanor's heart pounded. The prophecy was no longer words on a page. It was happening. The golden light from the crown of light filled the chamber, casting shadows that twisted and danced along the stone walls. Eleanor's eyes widened as she saw what had been hidden for centuries. A section of the floor slowly rotated, revealing a deep stairwell carved directly into the bedrock beneath Rosslyn Chapel. Gabriel grabbed her arm. "This is it, the true heart of the temple's secrets. Whoever controls this knows the destiny of the order." They descended into the hidden chamber, the air growing cooler and heavier with the scent of ancient stone and candle wax. The walls were lined with alcoves containing relics, manuscripts, and ceremonial artifacts, each one meticulously preserved. At the far end, a massive stone sarcophagus rested beneath an archway adorned with the same double knight emblem. Eleanor approached cautiously. Her fingers traced the carvings, and she realized the sarcophagus was not a tomb but a reliquary, a vault of knowledge. Carefully, she lifted its lid. Inside lay a series of scrolls, codices, and a small crystalline orb that pulsed with light in response to the crown of light. Suddenly, a scream echoed from above. The Black Cowl had broken into the chapel. Gabriel spun, sword ready. They should not have come here. The attackers tried to rush the chamber, but as they crossed the threshold, the light from the crown flared violently. Several of them fell back, clutching their eyes, their faces twisted in pain. Eleanor realized the crown was more than a key. It was a guardian, a protective force tied to the prophecy. Eleanor's hands shook as she held the medallion over the crystalline orb. Symbols glowed on the walls, aligning with the energy of the crown. The room seemed to breathe, the air vibrating with power that had lain dormant for 7 centuries. Gabriel's voice was calm but urgent. This is what Jacques de Molay wanted preserved. The temple's knowledge, its legacy, its warning. If the Black Cowl takes it, the world will suffer. We cannot let that happen. Eleanor nodded. She understood now. The prophecy was not just about power or treasure. It was about protection, about awakening the temple at the right time to safeguard history itself. Outside, the Black Cowl regrouped, preparing for another assault, unaware that the temple itself had already awakened to defend its own. Eleanor carefully unrolled the oldest of the scrolls, the parchment brittle yet surprisingly intact. The Latin text was dense, written in an elegant, deliberate hand. But as she studied it, she realized it was more than words. It was a map, a guide, and a warning all at once. Gabriel watched her intently. "What do you see?" Eleanor's eyes widened. It's instructions. Not just for the Templars, but for anyone who finds the crown. It speaks of a hidden force, something that can disrupt nations if it falls into the wrong hands. The crown of light is meant to control or neutralize it. Gabriel nodded slowly. I feared as much. That is why the prophecy was created, to protect it until the world was ready, until someone worthy came to claim it. The scroll went on to describe ancient mechanisms, secret locations, and coded symbols embedded in various cathedrals across Europe. But one line stood out, repeated with urgency. When the 7 centuries have passed, the world will face shadows that can only be held back by the light of the temple. Beware the Black Cowl, who seek darkness, and trust only those bound by the oath. Eleanor felt a chill. This isn't just about history, as she whispered. It's about now. Whoever controls this power could change everything. Governments, banks, technology, entire nations. Gabriel's hand rested on her shoulder. And that is why we cannot fail. The Templars knew their enemies would endure. The Black Cowl are descendants of those who betrayed them, and they will stop at nothing to claim this for themselves. Eleanor held the medallion and gazed at the crystalline orb. A connection pulsed between them, a network of energy that seemed almost alive. The crown wasn't just a symbol of power. It was the anchor for the temple's legacy, designed to awaken and guide those chosen to protect it. Outside, the wind howled through the ancient chapel. Somewhere, the Black Cowl were regrouping, preparing for another strike. Eleanor understood one thing clearly. The battle for the temple's secret was only beginning, and the prophecy demanded courage, cunning, and the wisdom of centuries. A sudden crash echoed through the chamber as the Black Cowl breached the entrance, their numbers greater than Eleanor and Gabriel had anticipated. Shadows moved with precision, weapons raised, their intentions clear: seize the crown at any cost. Gabriel stepped in front of Eleanor, sword drawn, while she held the medallion tightly, feeling its warmth pulse in her palm. The crystalline orb atop the pedestal began to glow brighter, reacting to her touch. Eleanor, Gabriel shouted over the roar of the attackers. Focus. Let it guide you. The chamber seemed to come alive. The walls vibrated with energy, the ancient carvings shimmering as if acknowledging the presence of the crown. Eleanor felt a surge of connection, the temple itself responding to her will. She raised the medallion toward the orb. A beam of golden light shot upward, spreading across the room in a brilliant, protective wave. The Black Cowl stumbled back, shields raised, cries of pain echoing as the force of the crown struck them with unrelenting power. Gabriel moved like a shadow, striking with precision, disarming attackers and driving them back toward the stairs. Eleanor felt the energy flow through the chamber, as if the crown were teaching her the ways of the temple, revealing paths, hidden strengths, and ancient wisdom. But the Black Cowl were relentless. One of them lunged at Eleanor, grabbing her shoulder. Instinctively, she pushed the medallion toward him. The light engulfed him completely, and when it faded, he had been thrown several feet back, unconscious. Gabriel shouted, "Enough of this. We must finish what they started centuries ago." The remaining attackers hesitated, now aware that they were no match for the awakened crown. Eleanor's confidence surged. The prophecy was coming true, and the temple's legacy was defending itself through her. Outside, the wind howled, carrying whispers of the past, the voices of knights, guardians, and the Grand Master himself, guiding them through the darkness. The battle had turned. The temple had awakened. The chamber fell silent, the echoes of battle fading into the stone walls. Eleanor sank to her knees beside the crystalline orb, her hands still trembling. The medallion glowed softly, as if sensing her awe and determination. Gabriel knelt beside her. "Now you see," he said quietly, "why the Templars protected this above all else. The Crown of Light is not merely a relic, it is a beacon, a conduit of knowledge and power. It channels the wisdom of generations, the strength of those who gave their lives to preserve the temple's truth." Eleanor traced the carvings around the chamber, noticing patterns she hadn't seen before. When she placed the medallion against the orb, the room filled with golden symbols, flowing like liquid light across the walls and ceiling. They formed words in a language she instinctively understood. The temple awakens not to conquer, but to protect. Those who wield its light bear responsibility. Only the worthy may guide it. Beware the shadows, for they seek to corrupt the world with false power. Illuminate the path, and history will honor the brave. Eleanor's voice trembled. It's a map, a guide, and a warning all in one. Whoever controls the crown can reveal the truth of history, and prevent those who would twist it for darkness. Gabriel nodded. The prophecy was never about vengeance. Jacques de Molay foresaw a time when the world would again need the temple's light. 7 centuries passed, and now that time is here. We are its guardians. Outside, the sounds of the Black Cowl's retreat echoed faintly, their ambition thwarted by the awakening. Eleanor looked at the medallion, then the crown, feeling a deep connection, as if the centuries of the Templars' sacrifice had been channeled into her hands. The prophecy had been fulfilled, not by destruction, but by awakening. And yet, Eleanor knew this was only the beginning. The world was vast, and darkness never rests. The temple had awakened. The chamber was quiet now, bathed in the soft glow of the Crown of Light. Eleanor and Gabriel stood side by side, catching their breath, their hearts still racing from the confrontation with the Black Cowl. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees, carrying the faint scent of rain and centuries-old stone. Eleanor carefully placed the medallion back on the pedestal, feeling its warmth resonate with the crystalline orb. She unrolled the scrolls, examining the intricate symbols and maps. Each line contained guidance, warnings, and instructions left by the Templars for the chosen few who would inherit their legacy. Gabriel placed a hand on her shoulder. The world doesn't know it yet, but knowledge like this is dangerous in the wrong hands. The Black Cowl sought to twist it for power, but now it is our duty to protect it, to ensure that the temple's light guides, rather than destroys. Eleanor nodded. We have to be careful. There are likely other factions out there who would kill for this. We can't let history repeat itself. Gabriel glanced toward the stone sarcophagus and the alcoves filled with relics. This is only the beginning. The scrolls contain directions to other sanctuaries, hidden across Europe. Each holds a piece of the temple's knowledge. We must gather them before anyone else does. Eleanor felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She had come in search of history, curiosity driving her. Now, she held a living legacy, one that demanded courage, intelligence, and unwavering vigilance. The crown of light pulsed faintly, as if acknowledging her resolve. Eleanor realized that, in fulfilling the prophecy, she had not only preserved the Templar legacy, she had become part of it. Outside, the night was calm, but Eleanor knew the struggle was far from over. The temple had awakened, and now, so had its guardians. Dawn broke over Rosslyn Chapel, painting the stone with pale gold. Eleanor and Gabriel emerged from the hidden chamber, the medallions safely returned to the pedestal and the scrolls secured. The Black Cowl had been forced into retreat. Their plan had failed, at least for now. Eleanor took a deep breath, feeling the weight of centuries settle around her. "It's over, for now," she said. Gabriel shook his head. "The fight never truly ends. But today, we honored the prophecy. Jacques de Molay's vision has been fulfilled. The temple has awakened, and its legacy is safe in the hands of those who understand its purpose." Eleanor glanced at the crown of light, still glowing softly. Its radiance was not a sign of power to dominate, but of knowledge to guide. She realized that the Templars had not left treasure or conquest, they had left wisdom, tools, and protection for a world that would one day need it again. The prophecy wasn't just about survival, as she murmured. It was about awakening us, awakening the Guardians. Gabriel nodded, a faint smile breaking his stoic expression. "And now, that responsibility passes to us. We must watch, protect, and prepare, and ensure the Black Cowl never succeeds in corrupting the temple's legacy." The wind swept through the chapel grounds, carrying whispers of the past, voices of knights, guardians, and Jacques de Molay himself, blending into the present. Eleanor felt a connection across centuries, a lineage of courage, wisdom, and unwavering duty. As they walked down the chapel steps, the first rays of sunlight struck the medallion and the crown, making them sparkle like fire. Eleanor knew this was only the beginning. The world had not yet seen the full potential of the temple's legacy, but when the time came, its light would illuminate the path for all who were worthy. The prophecy had been fulfilled. The temple had awakened, and the guardians had risen.